And it's very important in this year of 2024 that we keep many things in our minds at once, because we're getting so many things happening all at once that responding to them is very difficult. Of course, there is this war going on in Israel, the Gaza Strip, the Middle East, whatever you want to call it. Israel is intent on taking out Hamas, Hamas's ability to wage war. But one of the things they're very concerned about is tunnels and underground works that Hamas uses to store things in. And what I'm trying to do is raise the consciousness of the fact that Israel, if they use techniques that are better, that use science, they would not have any necessity for creating all these casualties that they're doing. It's totally unnecessary. They could use something called muon tomography. I will repeat that. Muon tomography. It was used to find a chamber in the Great Pyramid of Giza about 7 years ago. It's been used to chart caverns and chambers underneath volcanoes to try to figure out if molten lava is coming into them. It has been used in many occasions. It's been used in Oak Island to try to identify a treasure chamber about 100 feet down underground. And it can identify tunnels going down as low as 500 feet or 1,000 feet, which is lower than you can get with ground-penetrating radar, which no one mentions Israel is even using that. So I implore Israel to use science and not use silence with respect to humane options for their war effort. Okay, we'll pass by that, and let's go to the poem which I recently wrote, finished up to this level just at about 1 p.m. today. I want to mention, I did a thing about, inspired by Paul Robeson and the Old Man River song from Showboat. I updated it and did a thing about Old Man Trumpster. This was back in 2020. So I was thinking about the fact that Paul Robeson is also known for the Ballad for Americans, which is a song, a poem made into a song about 1940 is when it was first done. It's been done by other people. It's been updated since. But it occurred to me that I don't know if anyone has written a ballad for Ukrainians, because Ukrainians are suffering a monstrous war at this time. In 1940, the U.S. was coming up upon a war. It was a patriotic song called The Ballad for Americans. And I thought I would write something called A Ballad for Ukrainians. Now, because we need to sometimes keep two thoughts in our minds at once, and we have to be very careful because it's a complicated world. This poem, I will mention, is critical of our leadership, our President Biden at this time, and but it brings up a lot of concepts that people don't know about. People, as I said before, people need to be informed. They need to understand what's going on. So this is the Ballad for Ukrainians, and I'm not going to try to sing this, although it could be put to music. It was a cold atmosphere in 2022. The threats of invasion fear did imbue. The February sky had never seemed so bleak. An ominous mood loomed, almost none could speak. Now evacuation was the choice of some, though still most believed the worst wouldn't come. The highways were packed with those who had fled. Yet Ukrainian patriots said, "We'll fight until we're dead." The tiny republic, which had so recently performed a revolution of dignity, they protested in masses. 100 shot. Yet the would-be Putin puppet, a comeuppance he got. The foreign fake winner of a flawed election had to accept the people's rejection. And now in an amazing electoral landslide, a new leader emerged Putin couldn't abide. The dictator to the north and the East, decided to be a most abhorrent beast. He demanded Ukraine's capitulation, that they had to accept almost total degradation. The world was paralyzed at the ultimatum. They didn't believe Putin could be such a scum. The United States offered Ukraine's leader a ride. "No, I need weapons instead," that hero cried. Some weapons had been shared in 2019 when Trump's holding them up. Congress had seen, but little was done to really shore up the defense as the enemy's buildup for invasion was intense. The leader of America in 2022 said, "Sorry, I'm offering a negative view. Looks like you're outnumbered 10 to 1. We're figuring in a week Putin will have won." No one mentioned the '94 Budapest Memorandum. Perhaps to America it seemed a conundrum. Though the plain text said to come to the aid of Ukraine in return for a great sacrifice, easy to explain. Ukraine gave up weapons of the nuclear type in the interest of peace with very little hype, disarmed themselves, the world to be safer, for security guarantees. But now the protectors dither. The US and UK and Russia also agreed to defend Ukraine. Doesn't everybody know? Well, of course it was naive to freaking trust Russia. That was probably a guaranteed bust. But what about America and Britain? Somewhat great. Wouldn't those two allies prevent Ukraine's fate? Well, Biden did seem to feel a little bit of pity, even if he had said to Z, "Flee the capital city." Well, all were very conspicuously silent, and Russia on its power grab wasn't going to relent. Ukraine seemed too likely to suffer like Poland, since Putin insisted the entire country he owned. Troops were amassed at the near-open border. The rhetoric of Putin admitted no quarter, but a handful of patriots decided to believe. They determined to stay. They would not leave. They prepared for the storm with very great dread. The conventional wisdom was for many dead. No time to write up a fancy declaration. All they had was pure determination. The leader's name was Vladimir Zelensky. He was forced into wartime leader quite suddenly. His past was so humble, a comedian, yet saddled with a task like to Washington, or maybe some would say more like Churchill's, to marshal his people's stalwart wills. In our patriotic past, it was self-evident that to submit to tyranny was decadent. Luckily, the Ukrainian people somehow did summon resistance much greater than expected by some, and gradually of assistance there would be more, at least a little of what was promised in '94. So the invasion arrived, bombs bursting all around. The enemy dictator saw no law that could be bound. His evil and undeterred treachery, or the enormity of his perfidy. No respect for law or any precedents, national and historical monuments, civilian residences and infrastructure were targeted with the most total evil pure. Women were raped and prisoners tortured. The cities struck hard and the people endured. The horror of modern air bombardment, recalling World War II with worse armament. Hospitals and cafes were just blown to pieces. Russian forces, of course, do as Putin pleases. Children were kidnapped to be indoctrinated, made to renounce those to whom they were related. For the Ukrainians, blocks of buildings were destroyed, but the weapons they had were well employed. At one point, a Russian vehicle file, 40 miles long, was cut up in style. The Russians made one tremendous war crime. They attacked a nuclear reactor one time, actually set a building there on fire. Only the defenders' quick action prevented a fate dire. There was a large city named Mariupol. The Russians made its destruction their goal. The defenders would fight to death, they declare. Thankfully, some did survive the affair. So you can see the resistance was very strong. The Ukrainians accepted the war could be long. New weapons, when supplied, were seldom used wrong. They began to push the Russians back toward where they belong. But although Biden and other allies talked a good game, their reluctance to really back Ukraine was a shame. There was no real push to supply the Iron Dome or a high level of tanks that were the best to roam. The Patriot missile systems came in extremely late. In Kharkiv, the important seed bank met its fate. The second greatest storehouse of biological science has been met with almost unbelievable silence. With great heroism, Ukraine sunk the Moskva. Us not helping Odessa exudes a foul aroma. And how they've been made to wait for the F-16s. Looks like malfeasance, or so it seems. And so we have come to 2024. The pro-Putin Republicans say, no more, showing what wickedness is at their core. For more aid, Zelensky did come to implore. Now, we've already explained the solemn agreement that the US and Britain defend Ukraine. It meant, yes, all the naysayers whine, it's not a treaty. Did that cause FDR to deny Churchill's entreaty? Now, Americans, let's get something straight. Biden has always been too little and too late. And now with Republican intransigence, it's time for him to do some due diligence. The truth is that there's $300 billion in Russian frozen assets, ready and willing, to be transferred to Ukraine totally legally. If Biden agrees, he wants Ukraine to be free. He can use the International Emergency Act. He could sign it today, and that's a fact. That would fund the war for 2 years at least. Who knows? It might even be a signal towards peace. Maybe Putin would give up. He can't stop Ukraine that easily, huh? For Ukraine to be able to buy more and better weapons on their own, to release the fetter that keeps them almost like America's slave. We would assert we're the home of the brave. Brave enough to do a highly moral action and not live under the thumb of our fascist faction. So I ask, where is the decency of Biden? Why, from the call of history, is he hiding? He just has to sign a piece of paper. That's the president's most simple labor. Failure to do so means Ukraine may die. Those fighting for freedom ask justly, why? Mr. President, the call of destiny is at hand. Your own timidness you must now command. Take the helm of the ship of liberty. Do not let your legacy be one of treachery. Okay, now we can keep two ideas in our heads at once. Ukraine needs our help. The frozen Russian assets must be released so the Ukraine can defend itself and so they can reconstruct after the war is over. Lawrence Tribe, great constitutional scholar, has shown the way. You can look it up, Lawrence Tribe, Frozen Russian Assets on Google.